Welcome back to Retro Wednesday at the Time Here Hanger. This is Mike, and today I want to talk to you about the Mego chips toy line based off of the TV show at the time. And we're going to talk about the 3.75 inch scale stuff. We're not going to talk about the 8 inch so much. Talk about a few oddball, off the wall things that they made back then that they kind of rebranded with the name. But for the most part, we're just going to talk about this very, very small toy line really quickly here on Retro Wednesday. Talk about Chips, California Highway Patrol, coming up. So the TV show itself, it was okay for the time. It was very stereotypical of that type of kind of a TV show, a little bit of action going on and kind of having some moral story going on with it too at the same time. When I recently rewatched a few episodes, it just didn't feel the way I remembered it, but I guess you could say if I haven't watched it for 40 years or 30 years, then that is probably why. But anyway, it's still kind of fun. It brought back a few memories, but not the same. Not the way I remember it. Anyhow, it ran from 1977 to 1983, and then they tried to reboot it with either a movie or show in 2017. So there was some attempts to bring it back, but those failed. You're never going to recapture the charm of the 1977 to 83 Chips TV show. We're going to start this video out a little bit different than I normally do. We're going to start talking about the bad guys, and there's a reason for that, because when I did the Dukes of Hazzard, I had no idea why their arms were looking like they're no fun at parties, but they have a lot of fun on their own. And with this, I saw somebody show it's so he can hold his hat, because his hat is separate. And so it was, which one is this, Cletus, or is this one Roscoe? It's one of the two. Anyhow, he has the removable hat, and he can hold it like that. I thought it was kind of cool, but they're not the exact same arm. The part reuse isn't exactly the same. I was thinking they might have reused the legs on this. They might have reused a couple things, but the arms are different, the torsos are different, the heads are different. But let's get into these bad guys here. So it is a 3.75 inch scale, so it would scale with your G.I. Joes, your Star Wars, and a lot of those other toy lines. Clash of the Titans, of course, everyone had that. But this one here is Jimmy the Squeaks, and he is a boring character, a boring figure, just... They did this with a lot of their toy lines. Like, you would get secondary characters that probably wouldn't sell the best, and so they wouldn't get the upgraded articulation that we're going to see here in a little bit. Like this guy here didn't get the upgraded articulation, but the Duke boys got the upgraded articulation, and we're going to see that the 3 police officers got the upgraded articulation. So it's 5 points of articulation. Head's not moving very much on that one. Might be 4 points. I can't get the head to turn. Then the legs a little bit, but really not much to it. Dude in a vest, and I have a card back here, and so we can look at his card back here. Jimmy the Squeaks. You show a helicopter on there. It says Chips Highway Patrol. A couple of multilingual, and then Mego Corporation down here at the bottom on the back of it. It shows it's really cheap. This is real cheap. Just like it's got one side of good print, and the rest is just kind of like blue and white print. Now it does show John Sergeant Punch. They can't even be bothered to show a picture of everything on the back of these. At least when you buy the other figures, they show a picture of the actors. But getting that out of the way, let's look at the next one. So this one here is Wheels Willie, and yeah, he looks pretty much just like the other one except without a vest. He's just got a shirt on and blue pants and kind of boring. But you gotta have some bad guys to go up against and bad guys to track down if you collect this toy line later. I bet most people that collect this don't even care about the bad guys. And this is another one of the toy lines where the bad guys are the cheap figures. Now, a lot of times you get into like Silverhawks, and some of the bad guys are harder to find and rarer, and they weren't made in maybe as high quantities as the good guys, so they were harder to get. Yeah, not with this line, but he has an eye patch, and he's got that arm, and they have the same arms, probably the same legs, probably the same everything except torso and head. But yeah, not exciting of a figure. All the excitement is with the cops. We're going to get into Ponch, who is played by Eric Estrada, and the main star of the show, what everyone remembers from the show. And with that, he does come with a helmet. Now, they all come with helmets. All the drivers, all the police officers come with their helmets, and you can easily knock down a motorcycle. We'll get the motorcycles later on, but the helmet is gold, just like in the show, and then there's a touch of blue paint to the front, which is almost always rubbed off So it took me a while to get a few that had decent paint on them. And then here's his face, which looks okay. And no paint on the eyes, so that's kind of a letdown in my opinion. Head has articulation, and it's pretty much like the first year of G.I. Joe, the 1982 Straight Arm Joes. Same articulation right there, and like all the other Mego figures, pretty much all the other, he fits right in with the other Mego figures. Probably will display these on a Mego shelf because there's not very many, so just accommodate another one. Now, when we get into the other characters, I'll show how to tell the difference between each one of them. When we wrap that up, I'll just show each one, then we'll show all the differences between them. But they share pretty much the same bodies, they just have different heads, and there are a few differences that I will show. But you could probably swap the bodies on all of them if you needed to, if you found like a good figure that just needed like better torso and legs or something. But anyhow, they do have this stripe down the side, which they all do, and it looks pretty good. And they've got this paint on the side right there on the shoulders to signify it. Now, they do come with a gun. This is the same thing that they did with Buck Rogers, where it is molded to the side of the hip, and it's not removable, so you don't have to track that down. You only have to track down the stinking helmet. That is the only problematic accessory. Next, we have John, and I guess John must have had big 70s hair, because his head is just cramming it in this just so hard. But his head looks, blonde hair, looks all right. I don't know if it really matches the actor so much. The Eric Estrada, maybe it sort of did. Same old thing. So it's kind of like we're sitting here looking at the same thing, but I'll show you all the differences here in a bit. But pretty much the same body, pretty much the same everything. The only thing that's truly different is the head, and then some coloration and paint apps to things. But getting this figure here, now this is probably the second hardest figure to get out of the line, and oddly enough, the first one, Eric Estrada one, is Paunch, is probably the easiest to get out of these three figures. But John, second hardest. Let's get into Sarge, who is the hardest. Here is the Sarge figure. He is the hardest one to get out of the three officers, the three good guys in here. Probably because little kids didn't want to play with an old man figure, that they wanted the two main ones the most. Plus, the two main ones were packed with the motorcycles in a kind of a gift set. So he was only carded. They probably did the same exact number of figures that were carded, and then the other two were packed in the other sets. But anyway, he's probably not the most fun to play with. Anyway, he does have these some kind of white paint to show he's graying on his sideburns, if that was a thing. I didn't even notice when I watched the show. And you will notice some discoloration in shoulders and stuff like that. But that's not that it's a different color. It's that it's just discolored over time because it's a different type of plastic, I guess. And or one's plastic, one's paint. Anyhow, the back of it looks fine. The front of it's what looks discolored. But anyhow, same body, same everything. Let's go ahead and get into showing you the differences between the three that are subtle, but they're different, and to where you probably truly can't swap anything but the torso and the legs. All right, so here's the three figures. This is the Sarge. I mentioned they don't have peg holes. Anyway, you can't stand them up on stands because there's no peg holes. This is the Sarge. This is John. This is the Paunch Eric Estrada figure. Now, notice the skin color on his arms are different. He's got that natural tan that everyone's probably jealous of. It's beautiful, wonderful tan without having to work at it. This dude here is kind of pale and pasty, and this guy, I think his arms are just slightly discolored. But what I've seen is I think that these two have pretty much the same skin tone on the arms, but then there's going to be something else that's a little bit different. When you get to the sides here, you notice that Sarge has some lines on his sleeve, which I guess signify his rank, and the other two don't. Which, I mean, these are just observations I've made, and I don't know 100% that that's the way it came. I bought all my stuff loose and used, and things could have been swapped out before I got them. But these are the observations I made based on the figures that I got, and they're all consistent. All three sets are 100% consistent. So with that, I do believe these differences, these parts can't truly be swapped out, or you won't have a correct figure. You know, we cannot talk about this toy line without talking about the motorcycle, which you might say, hey, Eric Estrada's the star of show, well, the motorcycles are stars too, and the toy line, the motorcycles are probably the biggest star of the toy line. You could also put your other figures on it. You could put, well, I don't know if you want to put a Dreadnought on it, but you could put other figures on this motorcycle. Now, there's a couple of things that I've noticed. First off, you've got like a foot peg to put your feet in to slot them into this foot peg here. And then there's that. But to get them in both pegs, it doesn't work. And then get them to hold both handles is kind of hard. It's really challenging in the end to try to do all that. But they do have stickers and decals on them, and then there's decals on the back. And then you have this windshield that's sometimes missing, and sometimes it's missing and broken. And then you have this antenna, which is a lot of time missing or broken, or really missing its chrome and worn out. So it's a real challenge to get this motorcycle in good condition. It's not a challenge to get a motorcycle. It's a challenge to get one in good shape. But people say, well, why do you have more than one? Well, there's 3 of them that ride their motorcycles. But then there's a 4th one that actually has a different function. And it's, if you notice here, it doesn't have a figure. It's got a kind of a formed rider to it. And that's for this other little playset looking thing. The motorcycle launcher, and it is, I guess I should look a little more into it, but it's supposedly a reuse of an Evel Knievel one, and they just adapted this motorcycle to it. And so there's an Evel Knievel motorcycle launcher out there, it's my understanding, which is kind of interesting. It might be why they designed it, but this is, everything about this looks exactly the same as the standard one, as you could see. But underneath it, it has a gear in here and a weight so that you can spin it and launch it, which it is kind of scary actually when you think about the damage that it could do if you launch it. But you put it into here and it locks into place, and then you come around here and you wind it up, and then you launch it. It's loud, it's annoying, it's obnoxious, it's silly as heck, but it's effective and it gets the job done, and this thing will go pretty far, and it's got pretty much the same stuff as the other ones do. But really a cool little toy, but also it was nice to have one of these in a little bit better shape, and it's got more heft and weight to it. The driver, on the other hand, is kind of dorky. Well, very dorky. So now we're getting into another reuse piece, and they reused this car from what they falsely used in the Dukes of Hazzard line. But this is the police car for Chips, and you know, you see a lot of police cars and they look exactly the same as, or almost exactly the same as, the models that they used in Dukes of Hazzard. I'm sure there's a difference in the models, but they all looked very, very similar because of the styling at the time. This looks like it's 2 decades, 3 decades earlier, and I don't know why they went with this design. Maybe they had this already, because they've used it now, I've seen, for 3 different things. You just slap another sticker on it, give it a little bit different coloration to it, and with that, that's all there really is to it. But you can go side by side and see this is the Hazard County, and it all looks the same. Some of these have chrome, some of these have silver. On this one here, I have one that has chrome too. It's kind of funny if it's got chrome here, silver here, chrome there. If it's if it's silver there, it's chromed there. That's interesting because there's different variations that they did with this car. But it's kind of fun. It's something not really necessary in the toy line, but I like having some oddball, wacky stuff here and there. Other companies licensed out the Chips name, and they did the reuse thing, just like you saw with Star Wars. Had vans, but there was no van in Star Wars, but there were Star Wars vans out. Same things with Chips, and they made a whole lot of other stuff. So I'm not going to be all inclusive, but these are just the things that I found around, and some stuff I found on eBay. But this is Buddy L made this, and it's kind of cool. It reminds me of what Lone Wolf McQuade drove in that show, so I kind of like having that. And then there's this. It's too small to really scale with them, but it's nice to, hey, if you want to have a whole bunch of motorcycles in your arsenal there, then it is kind of cool to have it. So that's what it's there for. It has a kickstand on it and stuff, so pretty cool with that. Then they also made a small one from Fleetwood, and I'm not sure if I can get this thing to work. I did the other day. And it's one of those that you just wind it up and it goes. Well, it wound. Sort of. And then they made an even smaller one than that for Galgo. Made a tiny ripcord one. And so that's another one that they made for Galgo. And you just pull the ripcord on it and it probably goes real fast. And then there's the copter and van that they made for the 8-inch line. Now, I'm not going to talk much more about the 8-inch line, but the copter is really cool. So I have to show the copter. Anyhow, there it is for the Mego line and some of the other competitors that just kind of threw their name in the hat. So I hope you enjoyed this look at the Mego Chips toy line, and it's pretty on par with what Mego was doing back in the day. Very small toy line with 5 figures. You can get some motorcycles. You can get a few other things that they made. But for the most part, there's not much to it, which I kind of like. It's very satisfying to complete a toy line and move on, which is what I did here. And I'm glad you didn't have to chase down like 15 figures that are really hard to get or anything like that, like Black Hole or anything like that. But it is kind of interesting and fun to take a trip down memory lane. I hope you all enjoyed this, and if you know of any other cool stuff for the Chips toy line, let me know. I'd like to look into it and just have a little bit of fun with that. But I hope you enjoyed this Retro Wednesday. Like and subscribe, and I'm here every Wednesday with Retro Wednesday talking about something. Time to hear him hang her out.
Hey.
Hey, what's up? I'm right in the middle of giving a swim lesson.
Oh, sorry. I mean, probably most guys. You know, it was my first day, so I thought you'd probably want to see what I look like.
In all brown?
Right. You crashed 8 minutes ago on flat pavement.